Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and today I'm at the Crawford Arms, at an event run by Simon and hosted by Tabletop MK. Whilst this is a new venue for me, it has been going for a little while, and Simon is the person who's been running the events that I've been attending since he took over from Nick a little while back. This will be a 1,000 point bolt action formal event, and here is the list that I have brought, which consists of most of the Imperial Japanese Army models that I have. And due to me needing to stretch out my models to get to 1,000 points, and with only limited vehicles, although I'm getting some more vehicles soon, the entire infantry force of this army is rated as veteran. Essentially, if it has boots, it's a veteran. If it has tracks or wheels, then it's regular. Nice and easy to remember. My rifle platoon has a 3-model officer, a squad of 10 with a light machine gun, a squad of 5 that should have had a light machine gun but actually didn't bring one. I just brought 5 rifles, and so I'm down 15 points. And then there are some support weapons in the form of a sniper and an anti-tank rifle. Now, I really wanted to bring my flamethrower model along, and to do that I have to have an engineer's platoon. And I realised that 5-model engineer squad, veteran with a light mortar in each of them, is actually a pretty nice little thing to have, and kind of breaks up that 3 light mortar and 1 big grenadier squad that you often see with the Japanese in pod action. I think that this might actually work a little better with smaller squads running around rather than 1 big squad. And also a 3-model officer to run the engineer's platoon. For my vehicles, I have an autocannon truck, which I wasn't considering to be particularly amazing. We'll see how that does today. As well as the early Chiha with the howitzer, and a tiny Type 94 tankette, which is absolutely rubbish, but it's just what I have. I realised when I kind of laid it out at the start of the day, I have almost no anti-tank here. I've got lots of small HE, but no really high pen values. But what I do have is a solid veteran force of infantry, and I have been quite successful with that type of thing before. So let's have a look at our first game. There's a winding road with some buildings on the right, some fairly open ground on the left. We have a central objective in this copse of trees, kind of apple trees in the middle there. Now, I was half planning to push straight through the light cover directly towards the objective, and halfway to kind of go around through the buildings and push up diagonally to the middle. I ended up halfway doing both of them and sort of not doing either of them at the same time. My truck, with the close range weapons and officer on board, drove through the buildings, but actually just went all the way through to the other side of the board. And the rest of my infantry and vehicles went up the middle and kind of into that open ground. Now, I was really worried about the open ground, especially to begin with, as that's a lot of sight lines, and I was right to. My opponent dropped a howitzer and a land mattress right on that open corner, the worst possible news for me. And unfortunately, I had deployed my sniper in the furthest possible corner, all the way at the other end of the universe. And they went on ambush in turn 1, and I picked up that order die at the end of the game. They never shot, they never had a target. My anti-aircraft truck moved up slightly onto the road, just so it can try and seem threatening to distract my enemy whilst my infantry advanced. But with the artillery, and then the enemy Firefly pointing right at it, couldn't possibly survive. Or could it? The howitzer shot at it, and the rifle squad protecting the howitzer also shot it, and at least 2 shots from a Humber armoured car, and 3 shots from the Firefly, and they all missed, or I passed the cover save on 2 of them, I think. This anti-aircraft truck really served me as well, simply from its refusal to die. My opponent also put an infantry squad on their left, my right-hand side, which I tried to long shot away, but just couldn't quite shift. I had wanted to get rid of them or bypass them and get my truck full of close-range Nazis up close, but, well, I just had to take the chance, I think, and I parked the truck right in front of them, hoping that 4 pins would keep them inactive for the moment. I had my squad of veterans that I forgot the light machine gun of on this truck, and they jumped out and shot up that squad at close range. One of my officers was also on the truck, and they versed the enemy officer and won, and my flamethrower team set fire to that 17-pounder ammunition in the Firefly. And this was just fantastically successful from my angry truck, and they even started to overrun the enemy's centre. On my left I had a bit of a scare as the SAS showed up outflanking, and with all my units over this side of the board tied up firing against the artillery, I had to scramble to find something to fight these guys off, which only just about kind of worked because there were only 5 of the squad, although I think they kind of got unlucky more than anything else. With most of the enemy weapons either suppressed or taken out, the Chiha and the Immortal AA truck had the opportunity to advance on the artillery, putting enough pressure to prevent them from being effective until the end of the game. I had been ridiculously successful on the right flank and lucky on the left, which left my second officer in the middle just enough time to jump onto the objective and win a nice little first win for me today. My opponent played very well, excellent deployment, taking advantage of the terrain, popped in the SAS at what could have been an excellent time, and the Firefly in that central position was just a pain in my everything until I cooked it. My second game was in a swamp, and this is a nice little change of scenery as the group we're with today has a different set of terrain from what I'm used to. The ponds don't do anything if you're shooting over them, but any unit inside one gets light cover and rough ground. The grass and trees act as we normally use them, and the hills give you an elevated position, and I use that to great advantage. Our mission is table quarters, and I'm starting on the low left here. My plan is simple: to deploy behind the centre hill and push around it on both sides. My opponent deployed kind of focusing their rear line and had the intention to push over the hill. Of note is I had my anti-aircraft truck on a little hill at the back with great sightlines to shoot over a large proportion of the other side of my opponent's deployment. I gave it a way to move out, but I never actually needed to because it provided valuable fire support to this flank for the entire game. I quickly got a little bit worried as the enemy's infantry kind of formed up in the centre behind the big hill in the middle, as I hadn't really got into position and wasn't really able to fight this off. This could have very easily overrun my limited numbers. And even more so as everything they had was pummeling my only 10-man squad in the grass. However, that made me notice something. With every weapon the opponent has pointed at one squad, that means that I have free rein for the entire rest of my army to get stuck in, and my vets would fight better at close range on the hill than my opponent, and so up I went. And down they came. It seems like I was wrong. I kind of misjudged that a little bit, and I was losing the fight in the middle as well. And so I tried my best to hand out pins as much as I could to slow them down. Because it's a table quarters game, any of their units that get across the hill into my deployment zone are going to score a lot. Now they did manage to get over, but not in enough numbers. Now my close range angry truck had some issues on this board because it is a wheeled vehicle, making it very limited as to where it can actually go on this board. It can't go through the grass, it can't go through the ponds, it can't go up the hills. Essentially, all I could do with it is race it around the outside of the board, and it came up behind the Chiha, and both of those kind of just ended up nose first into a 17-pounder anti-tank gun. The second time I fought one of these today, although this time it's not on a tank, surprisingly, it's also the second time that it kept missing. That Sabo ammunition just isn't doing its job yet. At the end of the game, I had plenty of units in my opponent's table quarter. A lot of them were dismounts from the truck, but everything else had kind of piled in as well. And my opponent had managed to get a lot of their infantry over the hill in the middle, but just not quite as many. Once we totaled the points, I found out that I quite handily won this second game. My opponent, again, played excellently, but with so many support weapons in their list, they were limited as to how many push units they had, and it's the push units that are the ones that score the points in this type of game. Okay, so the last game, and when I saw this board, I just instantly knew I was out. These open sight lines are just a disaster for me, and the entire board being either open or heavy cover, I was never going to stop my opponent from moving up, whilst also being able to move up myself. There are 7 objectives, 3 from my opponent, 3 for me, and 1 in the board centre. And usually you only need to own one more than your opponent, and so my normal tactic would be to take my 3 and fight for the middle, but I was entirely unconfident about surviving in any direction other than my primary push. And so I chose to punch straight through the middle, take my center objective, take the center board objective, and take the middle of my opponent's objectives. And then throw some sacrificial units on the flanks and hopefully own one of them at the end of the game, which would total 4. The game starts with an enemy airstrike, and then a second because Americans, and that slowed down everything I had and blew up my Chi-Ha. Just fantastic. My angry truck full of close range stuff charged up the middle to punch out the enemy, kind of the center of their force, and this had to go well, especially without my infantry moving up because of the airstrike. Well, the veteran squad jumped out and shot down a single enemy rifleman. The flamethrower missed, and my officer charged some security dogs to leapfrog on. Yeah, they lost the combat as well, and then everything got wiped out, all of it just gone. My infantry eventually got moving, and the truck kind of came back and crashed itself into a wall to provide cover, just too little too late. I was never getting to my opponent's center objective. However, on my left, my AA truck with the AT rifle next to it managed to slow down a US Marine squad and a Stuart. They took their objective, but they never got close to mine. And the right flank was much more of a dirty scrap, with half-strong rifle squads duking it out all over the place, my tankette sacrificing itself for nothing, and the enemy keeping their biggest squad on their objective rather than pushing into mine. Which means that I did manage to keep a unit there on the right-hand side. When the game ended, almost by accident, I held all 3 of my side and the board center. I feel my opponent and I both saw the board and had the same thoughts. Lots of sightlines, lots of heavy cover, and so moving up would be a disaster, which it kind of was for me, but my opponent's response was to turtle, which led them to not taking any extra objectives, whereas mine was to just try anyway, get stuck in, and I got lucky. So today, at the new venue, it's great. A nice cozy pub with plenty of varied terrain, cider on tap, and we've got more events booked with them in the future. My prize was a gift voucher which will immediately go back to them for some Conflict 47 models, because apparently I didn't buy enough of those already. This is your regular reminder to go out and play games, because playing games is fun, and I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.